Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, the Brooke Ashley, and today we are here to discuss The Real Housewives of Potomac, Season 6, Episode 12. Let me tell you something right now. This was the best episode so far in this season, hands down. Production was on point. The way I lost my mind when they turned it into like a scary movie edit, like Karen was hallucinating at the party. My girls, Candiace, Wendy, and Askale, the dream team. They brought it, read everybody down. I was here for it. I'm not going to say it again, Andy. Askale better be full-time come next season. She brings the reads, a cool head, common sense, and some A1 fashions. And she has excellent manners because she never arrives anywhere empty-handed. That's my kind of girl. For anybody who thinks that I'm about to read Miss Candiace down, you're on the wrong channel. I am on Candiace's side 110%. So, with all that being said, let's get right on into it because we don't have a minute to spare. And I know you didn't think that I was going to get through this recap with no Prosecco. We are toasting to an episode well done. They did that. Woo! I poured extra. Look at that. Look at that. Me just being extra as always. So good. The episode starts off with Gizelle. She's in the car with her daughter Grace, and we know that Grace is on the path to getting her license. Grace pulls into the driveway, and Gizelle lets her daughter know, while you might have done a better job, you are still not valeting anybody's car for this party, all right? Like I said in last week's recap, Gizelle, stop being cheap and please hire a driver's ed teacher for Grace. And Grace will be a pro in no time, all right? Because I don't know if you're the best driver's ed teacher. It seems like Grace is still having quite a few issues, but we'll talk about that later. So anyhow, Grace goes in the house and Gizelle gets on the phone and she calls up her girl Robyn. They start discussing their party that they want to have for their podcast called Reasonably Shady. Gizelle says, you know that my house is still being worked on, so we're going to have the party outside. Gizelle says in her confessional that the West Wing is all done, but now her entryway has to be worked on. I said, baby, it has been 84 years that you've been working on this house. It takes this long for renovations? I know that Heather Dubrow from the OC, her house took a long time because she was building a 40,000 square foot palace. But honey, your house is like what, 4,000 square feet tops? It should not be taking this long for renovations. And side note, I don't know why you would want to have a party at your house when your house is still being worked on. Girl, why can't you call up the Four Seasons or the Ritz-Carlton and have your party there? I mean, you could have it at a nice restaurant, rent out a back room, and call it a day. So anyhow, Gizelle's just going on about the party and the details and how everybody's going to sit outside, and she's excited to host the party for all the ladies. Robyn says in her confessional that she's kind of skeptical about Gizelle trying to have this party while her house is still being renovated. And Robyn, I don't agree with you often, but I agree with you right there. It makes absolutely no sense that your best friend wants to have this party and her house is in no shape to have guests over. So now Gizelle is going on about how Karen and Wendy, those two aren't allowed in her house if they have to pee. So she says if they need to do their business, they can go outside and pee, by the trees. So Robyn says, look, we can't treat them any differently. If they need to use your toilet to pee, then let them use your toilet. Don't be all extra talking about they need to pee outside in the grass. So Gizelle acquiesces and says, you know what, you're right. I'll let them in if they need to use the restroom. Again, I think that this whole idea of trying to have people over and your house is not in order is just a stupid idea. And I think it's so funny how Gizelle is always throwing out those age jokes regarding Karen, because when she made that joke like, well, Karen's at that age where she needs Depends, so I'll let her use my toilet. Karen is not that much older than you, sis. She's about 59, 60, and you're 50, 51. Like, I could see if she was 20 years older, but she's only 8 or 9. I mean, you about to be her age before you know it. So I would stop all those, well, she needs Depends or what have you. Like, okay, girl, because you don't like it when the younger girls like Candiace make jabs about your age because they're in their 30s and you're 50. And Gizelle is one of those people, she can dish it out, but she can't take it. But again, I digress. We see Karen, she's at home with Ray. Her publicist, Robyn, comes over with the candle prototypes. We all know that Karen is expanding her La Dame empire, and she is also doing candles just like her good friend Wendy. But child, I digress. So anyhow, they're looking at the prototypes. Karen is really excited. One of the candles is named Bohemian Fire, and Karen says how she wants to give all the ladies a luxury kit of the candle. So now Karen brings up Wendy's candles to her publicist, Robyn, and she's saying, I think that since Wendy's just starting out, she should look into e-commerce. That would be better for her brand. I was just thinking, Karen, I don't understand why you seem to be so pressed to talk about what you think Wendy should do. Like, you do what you want to do. Let Wendy figure out how she's going to launch her own candle line. And it was really funny how Karen kept bringing up how Wendy has the 1 wick and she has the 3 wick candle. I'm starting to feel like Karen has a guilty conscience. And I'm also starting to feel like she copied the idea from Wendy. I know that La Dame fragrance has been out since season 3, but just hear me out. It just seems like Karen is trying to convince herself that she's not copying her friend Wendy with the whole candle idea. I'm just saying, because I feel like if you weren't copying somebody, you wouldn't have to constantly bring up what they're doing every time you talk about your candles. I'm just saying, y'all, again, let me know what you think about this whole candle debacle down in the comments. So now Karen's publicist leaves and Karen and Ray go outside in their backyard. Now this part was so stupid. Ray's phone starts ringing and I think he gets a text message saying, hey, handsome. And Karen snatches his phone and she's like, who is this texting you? Hey, handsome. Like, I know a lot of women today are really hard up for a good man. I said, girl, nobody is thinking about Ray. Like, let's stop. And with Ray's tax issues, I don't even think you could get $1 out of him. Talking about hard up for a good man. Girl, stop. Karen dials the number back and she's like, hello, this is Mrs. Raymond Huger. Stop calling this phone. Me and my husband have been married for 25 years. And I was crying because Ray was like, don't tell her my name. Like, this is probably just a junk call. Like, just hang up the phone. It's not that deep. So then Ray makes a joke and he's like, I don't know what I would do with that young thing anyway. And Karen got offended. And then Ray had to rewind it back up. And he was like, nah, I just meant like, you know how you younger girls are. Like, y'all are a headache. I said, Ray, you said what you said. And Karen, don't take offense. Yes, you are, I think, 17 years younger than Ray, but you're not young. 59, while it's not old, it's not young. Like, you're not a spring chicken. So Ray meant what he said when he said, these younger girls are a headache. He was talking about the 20 and the 30-year-olds. Just saying, sis. And Ray knows he could not handle a 20 or 30-year-old. We move on to Candiace. She's at home. She's in the kitchen with her mom. I said, why is Mama Dorothy still here? Girl, go home. Doesn't she live in Atlanta? Like, go back to Atlanta. Go back to wherever you were at before. But, like, leave Candiace's house. Honestly and truthfully, I don't care how big Candiace's home is. I would have had Mama Dot in a hotel. She's not going to be stressing me out in my home, being a pain in my ass. No. So they're in the kitchen talking, and Candiace is discussing, I guess, how she wants to like do some renovations in their kitchen. Of course, Miss Dorothy has to go and give her unsolicited advice about how Candiace should do like a gold backsplash in the kitchen. And Candiace says, no, that dates the home. Like, I don't want to do that. So now Miss Dorothy says, oh, well, I have a gold backsplash in my kitchen. Are you trying to say that my kitchen is dated? And Candiace is kind of like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So now Candiace brings up the music video. And by the way, I watched Candiace's Drive Back music video a few days ago, and she did a phenomenal job. You would have never known that the cars hadn't come in, that she was having 5011 issues. It looks amazing. Candiace's album just dropped on Friday. And let me just say, I thought that I was gonna be like, oh, you know, it's okay. It feels like a housewife did this. But Candiace's album is actually good. She was definitely giving what the other girls were supposed to have gave. Like, check it out when you get a chance. It's a cute album. Candiace, you did a nice job. So Candiace says, now I saw that you and Mia were talking. What exactly were you talking about? And now here comes Miss Dorothy trying to play dumb.
I mean, I don't know what we're talking about. I forgot what I said.
So Candiace says, oh, really? Because that's not what Wendy told me. So here comes Dorothy lying again, talking about, well, I don't remember that being said. She didn't ask all that. All she said was just one thing, but honestly, I forgot what I even said. So Candiace is looking at her mom like, okay, girl, we really gonna do this? I don't like all that. You had all that mouth when I wasn't around. Now you want to act like you don't know what was said. Dorothy, you were better off coming clean to your daughter, because for her to see it for the first time about what was said on national TV along with all the viewers, I know that was heartbreaking. And again, Dorothy was 100% dead wrong to do that to her own daughter. Your parents are supposed to protect you. And y'all know how I feel about stuff. I don't believe that just because somebody is older than me, just because that's my parent, that I have to put up with BS. I would cut Miss Dorothy off real quick. Because you're not about to do some shady, shisty, messed up stuff to me and act like I need to accept that because I'm your child. Absolutely not. Respect is a two-way street. So now Miss Dorothy goes on to say how she was chit-chatting with everybody and she doesn't believe that Mia was being malicious. Candiace claps back and says, look, until Chris is caught in a hotel with men, women, or billy goats, then nobody needs to ask any questions about my marriage. Chris comes home and joins them in the conversation, and he says, the only contract that me and Candiace have is our marriage certificate and our prenuptial agreement. And I just have to say this real quickly. A lot of y'all who don't like Candiace are always so quick to say, well, Candiace is just jealous of Ashley and all them because they married for money and they have a coin and she had to marry a broke white man. Let me stop you right now because a lot of y'all have selective memory. Remember in the season 4 reunion, Candiace revealed that Chris is from a rich family himself. So all of y'all's reads about Chris being allegedly broke and how she's funding his lifestyle, that isn't true. Chris goes on to say, you have never paid for one bill under my name, Chris Bassett. So then Candiace says, if anybody wants to create a mess in my marriage, it's a bad move. We move on to Mia. She's out with her husband, her children, and her mother, Veronica. They're all getting ice cream. Is it just me, or does Mia's oldest son look like he could be 6 or 7? He looks about the same age as her other 2 kids. He just seems so little for 13, but I digress. We all know that Mia and her mother are trying to rebuild their relationship. So Mia says in her confessional that when her mom left prison, she moved in with Mia's sister. And she's lived with Mia's sister ever since. So the producer goes on to ask Mia, well, what was your mom in prison for? Mia says, I can't talk about all that, but what I will say is that she's been out of prison for about 6 or 7 years now. And my jaw was really on the floor when Mia said that her mom was sentenced to 20 years. I was like, well, damn, what happened? I said, child, a mess. So now Mia says to her mom, it just seems like because I have my shit together, you feel like I don't need you. Then Mia's mom gets teary-eyed and she says, Mia, I'm just so proud of you and all that you've accomplished, because seeing how you've had two messed up parents, you could have went a completely different way. Then Mia's mom really starts crying because she says how she just wants a better relationship with her kids. And then Mia's like, Mom, please don't cry. Please know that I'm proud of you, but I just feel like I'm still suffering and I'm still trying to heal. So now Gordon cuts in and he's like, good. Everybody's trying to forge a better relationship. Let's just leave it at that. And in my opinion, I felt like this conversation was a little too heavy to have her kids around. I thought that this would have been a better conversation between Mia and her mom separately. I just feel like let children be innocent and carefree. They don't need to know all this grown folk conversation until they're older. We move on to Wendy. She's at home. Karen arrives and they start discussing their candle lines. Karen says, girl, did Eddie shoot your business plan down? Like, how did it go? Wendy's like, child, Eddie shot it all the way down. And then Karen says, look, Wendy, I just want to say that I'm so proud of you. We are two beautiful Black women coming out with candle lines, and there's room for everybody because you know that my stuff's coming out. I don't care what anybody says. When that camera panned to Wendy's face, Wendy looked a little salty, in my opinion, about Karen mentioning how her stuff is coming out too. So anyhow, Askale comes over, and I was cracking up because Askale said, now girl, you didn't tell me you lived in damn near Canada, and we all know that Wendy lives really far. Now Wendy, I have to get on you for a quick second. What the entire F was that sorry spread that you had in that kitchen? She had about 2 day-old bagels, 8 grapes, and some leftover Dunkin' Donuts munchkins on a tray to serve them. I don't know what it is about this franchise, but y'all need to get it together when it comes to hosting, whether it's a party, whether you're having a few ladies over at your house, but y'all need to have a nice spread when you have guests over. That looked like leftover breakfast that your kids didn't eat. I don't understand why there wasn't a nice spread of some eggs, some bacon, some bagels, some French toast, an assortment of cream cheeses, some lox, have some orange juice, some champagne, some peach puree for some bellinis and mimosas, and call it a day. Listen, my mom was a model and an etiquette teacher, so I grew up knowing how to host. I can set a table. I can do a fabulous job when it comes to entertaining people. You will never leave an event of mine and say that you were hungry. That's just not happening. So Wendy lets Karen and Askale know that since she's partnered up with this organization, she wants to give back and she wants them to help her fill up some backpacks for teachers. Askale says, you know that I was an educator for 10 years and I was always coming out of my pocket to help the kids. So while they're packing up the backpacks for the teachers, Karen brings up the music video. Askale jumps in and brings up Mia's conversation with Miss Dorothy. She says, don't you ever feel so comfortable to ask my mama something like that. And Askale is absolutely correct. But my mom is different than Mama Dorothy. My mama actually likes and loves me, so she would have shut that down immediately. She would have been like, excuse me, Mia, what? Mia would have been told off. My mom does not play that, all right? Like, me and my mom are tight. Like, that is my girl. So that wouldn't have even flown. So Askale brings up Gizelle and Robyn's invitation, and she says, what did you all think about the invitation saying to friends and haters? And Wendy says in her confessional, I don't understand why you would address somebody as a hater in the invitation. Like, we've all put all that negative stuff behind us. Why are you trying to bring it back up? So then Askale says, did you guys see how it says at Hotel Gizelle? And they all start laughing. Wendy says, I hope Gizelle isn't the one decorating her house. And we all know that Gizelle has no taste or style. Let me say, Wendy was on fire in this episode. I mean, her shades and those reads, I said, Wendy, this is what we want to see. Not those rehearsed reads you were trying to give us earlier on in this season. So Wendy correctly guesses that Robyn and Gizelle are going into a business venture together, hence why they gave out this joint invitation. So now Wendy changes gears in the conversation and says how she wants to do a weekend trip to the Eastern Shore. She thinks it will be fun for them to get a house on the water and just have some fun since they've all been so busy. So now Karen goes on to ask if this could be a couples trip. Wendy says, yeah, that would be cool if the men came. I'd like that. So now Wendy goes on to ask, do you think Juan will come? And Karen says, based on his track record, I don't think he's going to come to this couples trip. So then Askale says, and who is Gizelle going to bring? And Wendy says, her luggage. And I got my entire life. I said, Wendy, you better go and read her down. So, child, it's the day of this raggedy, reasonably shady party hosted by Gizelle and Robyn. You have the construction workers working, making noise, the balloons blown away. I just said, what is this? To make matters worse, Gizelle has injured her foot and she has a big boot on her foot because she was moving a table and the table fell on her foot. I said, girl, I don't understand why you didn't have people setting up the party for you. Why are you being cheap trying to do this yourself? Like I said earlier, this party should have been at a hotel or at a restaurant. Now, I got on Wendy a few minutes ago for that sorry spread that she had when Karen and Askale came over. But Gizelle, you truly need your ass whooped to have the world's smallest charcuterie tray for 8 women. I said, are you insane? To have grown up in Jack and Jill and to be an AKA and this is the best that you can do when it comes to hosting a party? I said, Gizelle, it's bad enough that your house isn't even finished and this party looks a mess, but you don't even have an adequate spread of food for these women. You look cheap. If you ever need help hosting a party, call me. I will come and help you out, obviously for a fee, because it is unacceptable for you to have folks over at your house and that's the best that you can do. And I was shaking my head when you were eating the tray. I said, girl, you only have about 7 things on that tray. You're about to eat the whole thing. And your daughter was like, Mom, like, stop eating the food. Like, everybody else has to get there. I mean, the fact that you couldn't even go to Costco and get those, like, platters of sandwiches, you were better off doing that. I mean, you had nothing for those ladies to nibble on. If you could spend a few thousand for a bar, you could surely spend a few thousand for some food. But I digress. So Ashley arrives first. She says in her confessional that Gizelle's house is making some progress. I said, oh, really now? Well, I'm glad that you see the vision because the rest of us don't. Mia arrives. Mia is like, girl, what is this, honey? Like, where's the valet? This is not Hotel Gizelle. This is Motel Gizelle. Askale arrives. She looks really good, as always. Askale gets it right each and every time. The girls need to take notes. And my girl has that good home training because she never arrives anywhere empty-handed. Did y'all peep how she had that bottle of 1942? I said, that's right, sis. So they're under the tent and Gizelle's talking about how the construction should be done in a month. And you can hear the construction workers and there's all this noise. And again, this should not have been held at Gizelle's place. So now Wendy arrives, Karen arrives. She said, like, what is this tent? Are we at a COVID testing site? Like, what is this? I loved how there was a collective sense of confusion and disdain for this horrible party that was outside. Karen finally gets down to the tent and she gifts Gizelle a nice gift basket with her candle, her fragrance, and a nice bottle of my favorite champagne, Veuve Clicquot. Gizelle's like, thank you so much. Robyn makes a joke about how Karen is showing Wendy how it's done in regards to candles, and how Karen made sure to put her candle out first before Wendy did. And I'm not gonna lie, Wendy, I love you, but your face looked a little bit tight when you saw that gift basket. Before Karen sits down, she lets everybody know that she's gotten her vaccination shot and she feels a little bit strange. I said, girl, here you go with the dramatics. Everybody's there except for Candiace. Gizelle finally lets the cat out the bag that her and Robyn have gone into business together, and they have launched their Reasonably Shady podcast. Robyn is the reasonable one, Gizelle is the shady one. And then Gizelle lets them know that this party almost didn't happen because of a difference of opinion. So here comes Messy Mia asking questions about, well, what was the difference of opinion? And now Gizelle brings up the whole bathroom issue about how she didn't want certain people using her bathroom. So Wendy's like, now girl, who was on that list? Gizelle says, well, funny you should ask, it was you and Karen. Wendy claps back and says, well, it's really funny that you should say that because I wasn't even gonna come to this party, so that's really interesting. So now Gizelle says, well, Wendy, I felt that way because you've talked about my home in the past. Wendy says, hold up, wait a minute, rewind that back up. I have never talked about your house. Your fashions, yes, but not your house. Gizelle, you know good and well Wendy has never talked about your house. And also, we know how Bravo is. If she was talking about your house, Bravo would have played the tape back of her talking about your house. Just say that you're still upset about how Wendy got you all the way together when you guys were in Williamsburg. But don't come with this extra sauce about how she talked about your home when she didn't. So Gizelle says, and you were on the hater list. So Wendy's like, hater? Me? Hating on this? And when the camera flashed to Gizelle's unfinished house, I fell over. I said, Wendy, you better get her. This episode told me that Wendy needs to come back for season 7, 8, and 9. Wendy has what it takes. Wendy has the material to get these girls together. I was here for every single second of it. And Gizelle was shook when Wendy said, hating on this? Robyn jumps in the conversation and she says to Wendy, so why weren't you going to come? Wendy says, I felt like the invitation was really shady to say haters and friends. Robyn says, it seems like you took the invitation personal. And then Gizelle says, I mean, we went to a nude interlude party and we ain't know what the F that was about, but we came. So Gizelle changes gears and she goes on to ask if they all want to play a game. Ashley's like, wait, before we play a game, I want to get up and get another drink. Karen says, that's cool, but I want to snatch Mia for a few seconds. Like, I have to talk to her about something. So Karen and Mia go to the driveway and they start discussing the whole video shoot. Karen says to Mia, the other day when I was with Askale and Wendy, they brought up how you were discussing the whole financial stuff about Chris and Candiace to Mama Dorothy, and they didn't like that. So now Mia's getting defensive and she's like, I don't understand why Wendy feels a sort of way like nobody was talking to Wendy. I said, girl, just admit that you were dead ass wrong. You had no business asking Mama Dorothy anything regarding Chris and Candiace's marriage. You're wrong. I really hate how nobody can own up to anything in this group. And Karen, there was no reason for you to bring this up, to be really honest with you. I was like, girl, you're bringing this up now? It's not your place. And I don't understand why Karen's acting like Mia didn't do anything wrong or it was just innocent fun. No, Karen, that was dead wrong. What if somebody was trying to talk to you about your daughter Raven and her business? You'd be upset. I know that you ride hard for your daughter, as you should. So I don't understand why you're acting like you don't understand why Candiace would be upset at anybody having a discussion like this with her mother. But like I said, Karen is a friend to nobody. She's just worried about staying on this show by whatever means necessary. And if that means straddling the fence, playing both sides, not calling people out when they're wrong, then that's what she'll do. Everybody's back in the tent to play the game. Karen has goodies for everybody, and they're all gift baskets with her fragrance and her candle. And I was cracking up when the camera panned to Wendy's face with the gift basket in her hand. I said, like I said, Wendy did not seem too pleased. When she got home, she probably threw Karen's candle in the garbage. But I digress. So Gizelle's like, okay, y'all, it's game time. And she gives everybody a paddle. One side says reasonable, the other side says shady. And so she starts it off with the first question. Is it reasonable or shady for a friend to hold on to a grudge if there was an apology? Karen and Wendy say reasonable, and then I think everybody else says shady. So now they move on to the next question, and the question is it reasonable or shady for you to talk behind your friend's back? Everybody flips their paddle up and say it's shady. Gizelle says, well, it depends on the situation. Like the whole Eddie situation, that was reasonable, but Wendy telling Candiace what was said about her at the video shoot, that was whack. Wendy disagrees and says, that's not whack at all. You should tell your friend when somebody is talking about her. So now Mia jumps her sorry ass in the conversation and says, you shouldn't have said anything on the day of the shoot because that could have thrown Candiace off balance. I don't understand how the Green-Eyed Bandits and Mia have a way to flip everything in their favor. Y'all were wrong. That was an inappropriate conversation. Y'all were out of order for that. Wendy was well within her right to say something to Candiace. So Karen is sitting there watching them all go back and forth, and I was screaming at the edits. Karen's in her confessional saying,
this vaccine got me feeling crazy. Like I'm looking at Gizelle's house and it looks like it could just eat you up.
Candiace finally arrives. Hallelujah, won't he do it? And side note, I absolutely loved Candiace's top. I said that top has my name written all over it. If y'all see me in that top in the next recap, don't be surprised. Gizelle says to Candiace, we want to know what you think if Wendy was being a tattletale or being whack. Candiace says, oh no, like she was doing what a good friend should do. And then Robyn interjects and says, well, we feel like it was inappropriate for Wendy to tell you then, like that could have messed you up. Candiace says, I feel like Wendy has enough discernment and good judgment that if she felt like I would have been messed up hearing this news, she would have waited till a later date to tell me. I said, what don't y'all get? The time and the place was inappropriate for y'all to be having that conversation in the first place about Candiace. Why are y'all trying to spin this on Wendy like Wendy's in the wrong? So now Candiace turns to Mia and she questions her directly. She's like, Mia, I heard that 5 seconds upon you meeting my mom, you had all these questions about me and Chris and if he's getting paid or not. So now Mia wants to backtrack and she says, well, no, I only asked if Chris is getting paid and if he's your manager. So now Candiace goes on to further ask, why would you ask that? So Mia says, because there was no management, there was nobody to greet me when I arrived, you weren't even there. What does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Then Mia gets real shady and says, and I didn't want to arrive somewhere that was low budget. Candiace claps back and says, your mama's low budget, watch your mouth. So everybody's like, oh my gosh, she just said that her mama's low budget. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, did you just hear her? Gizelle's in her confessional saying, Candiace, stick to Mia's hands and feet being large, but not her mama because that's below the belt. I said, below the belt? Below the belt? Y'all come for Candiace at every single turn. And then when Candiace claps back, now it's a problem. For all of y'all who are big Dr. Heavenly stans, Dr. Heavenly's always talking about somebody's mama, but y'all go up for her, but when it comes to Candiace, now it's a problem. It was below the belt for Mia to even approach Mama Dorothy and say anything about Candiace and Chris's financial arrangement in their marriage. Colorism plays a big part on this franchise and why certain people get a pass for what they say and do, and other people, i.e. Candiace and Wendy, can't say anything in defense of themselves. So now Ashley interjects and says, but you're the one who told us about Chris. It was like, Ashley, shut the entire hell up. You weren't there. You're not friends with Candiace. You should have nothing to say. Ashley is determined to be contrary to anything that Candiace says. If Candiace says up, she's going to say down. If Candiace says it's nice outside, she's going to say it's nasty outside. She can't help herself. Ashley's saying, I know that if I had been at the video shoot, and I love when Candiace shut her down and said, but you weren't, beloved, so just rest. I said, girl, it really ate you up that she invited everybody else but you. Despite the fact that I can't stand Ashley, this needs to be her last season on this show. She has no storyline. And quiet as it's kept, the only reason why she has had a storyline in prior seasons is because of Michael and all his foolishness. Candiace turns to Mia and says, Mia, I've been a good friend to you when these hoes were talking about you. So now they move on to the next question, and the question is it reasonable or shady to call your friend up when you're drunk and tell them how much you don't like them? So everybody's laughing. Of course that's shady, and that's not your friend if they're telling you that they don't like you when they're drunk. So anyhow, Robyn's like, it's a true story. Karen did this to me. She called me up one day saying how much she doesn't like me and how she likes Juan better than she likes me. Robyn says that she likes the drunk calls from Karen because that's the only time when she's honest. Let me tell you something, it couldn't be me. If you get on the phone and tell me how much you don't like me, I'm blocking your number. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and entertain somebody who smiles in my face, but you really can't stand me. So now they move on to the last question, and is it reasonable or shady to have questions about a friend's drastic changes in appearance when rumors about their husband cheating have surfaced? So we all know that it's about Wendy and Eddie. Wendy's face is tight. Candiace is like, oh my gosh, Lord, not again. Can we just leave Wendy and Eddie alone? Gizelle says, it's reasonable to me. And then Wendy says, well, it's only reasonable if this weren't the same blog that reported that you have an STD. So everybody's like, oh man, like Wendy is coming out guns blazing. Like Wendy let the choppers sing. She was not playing with nobody. Wendy says, you continue to talk about me. I heard y'all were talking about me at Robyn's birthday dinner. I don't appreciate that. So Robyn interjects and says, girl, nobody was talking about you. Robyn starts calling Wendy an asshole, and I would have had to check Robyn real quick. Don't come cursing at me, sis. I am not the one or the two. So Wendy turns to everybody and says, every single one of y'all has my number. And if you were truly concerned, then you guys could have reached out to me one-on-one and had a conversation, but you guys didn't do that. Gizelle and Robyn handled this entire situation all wrong. And Gizelle, the fact that you were too cowardly to have the conversation with Wendy, so you had Ashley bring it up, you were out of line for that. Like I said, Ashley and Wendy don't have that sort of rapport or friendship for Ashley to be relaying any kind of news like that to Wendy. Gizelle says, Wendy, you know what? Just go, just leave. I'm not going to sit up here and be disrespected in my own house. Karen says in her confessional, now this is how I know that Gizelle is cuckoo, because we are not in her home. We are outside on public property. Woo! Oh my gosh. Karen saying that Gizelle's home was public property reminded me of Nene calling Chateau Charest Neverland at the season 4 reunion. Askale jumps in to say her piece. Mia, of course, is saying all this stuff under her breath. Askale turns to Mia and says, I suggest that you be quiet and sit your old hoe ass down. Karen screams out, look, y'all, I did not get vaccinated to be around all y'all heifers. So they're all laughing like, vaccinated, Karen? Really? You can't speak now? Karen gets tired of watching them all argue with each other. So she's like, Wendy, can you bring up the girls' trip, please? Because I think that everybody needs it. So Wendy says, yeah, I want to do a couples trip in Chesapeake Bay. And then Ashley says, ooh, Virginia Beach. And they're like, no, girl, Chesapeake Bay, big difference. I said, girl, you don't know geography? Ashley is such an idiot. So Wendy's going around the tent and she's like, yeah, you know, Ray's gonna be there, Chris is gonna be there, Gordon's gonna be there, hopefully Michael can make it. Candiace says, I hope not, because we all know that Candiace, like the rest of us, cannot stand Michael. So Robyn is upset that Wendy did not extend the invitation to her or Juan. And she says in her confessional, if Wendy hates me, that's fine, but it's like, just let me know. Wendy turns to Gizelle and says, oh yeah, and your luggage will be there, because we all know that Gizelle doesn't have a man. So Giselle's upset and she's like, okay, Wendy, thanks for that invite, but you can go, like, leave my house. Then Gizelle has the nerve to say how Wendy came to her house all stank. I said, now, girl, let's roll the tape back on how you've rolled up to quite a few people's houses over these last few years and have been nasty and stank. Don't do that. Because let the record show you've caused a lot of mess at people's homes. So everybody gets up to leave the party, and Gizelle wants to show Askale and Candiace a tour of her house. I was cracking up because Askale saw how long that pathway was to get to her house. And she was like, shout out to everybody. I had fun. I'm going to see it when your house is done, because me and these heels, it's not going to work. So now it's just Candiace getting the tour of Giselle's house. So now remember that Candiace was the last person to arrive. Her car is blocking everybody in. So while she's in the house getting the house tour, everybody's like, can somebody call Candiace so that she can move her car so that we can all leave? Robyn calls Candiace. Candiace says, oh, okay. So she's not ready to leave the house yet. And she goes on to ask Giselle's oldest daughter, Grace, if Grace will move her car. So now Grace goes outside. She's like, Robyn, can you come with me? Candiace said that I could back her car out. So Robyn's in the passenger seat. And baby, Grace then scraped up Candiace's tire and one of her hubcaps. I said, girl, a mess. Candiace comes back outside and she's like, okay, Grace, like Grace did that. And then she notices that Grace scraped up her tire and her hubcap. And she's like, oh, Lord. So I was watching the Bravo after show, and Gizelle said that initially she did not want Grace driving Candiace's car. She had a bad feeling that something was going to go awry. So I said, now, girl, if you had a gut feeling, why wouldn't you just say, you know what, have Robyn do it? Like, I don't trust that my daughter can do a good job. Like, that would have been the smart thing to do, right? So anyhow, Gizelle goes on to say how when everybody left the house, production came in and said, hey, you know that Grace kind of scratched something up on Candiace's car. So Gizelle says that she was freaking the F out, and she goes into Grace's room, and Grace was crying because Grace had a feeling that something had went terribly wrong when she was trying to back out. So Gizelle goes on to say how she's just freaking out and panicking, and she's like, oh my gosh, I should have never had Grace, drive her car, and that she even offered Candiace money to cover the cost. I said, well, thank God she was considerate enough to do that. But all in all, Candiace did not accept Giselle's money. She was actually a really good sport about it. She was like, I love Grace. I love her daughters. It was no big deal. Like, I've scratched my car up a bunch of times, and I'm sure that by the time I get my next new car, this car will be all dinged and scratched up. So it is no problem. She said that she wasn't mad at Grace. Things happen, and I love it. Candiace is very carefree about stuff, and you can't be mad at the children, honey. I mean, you know that Grace would not do that purposely, but I will say, follow your intuition. If you know that your child is not ready, don't let them do it. Grace knew that she wasn't ready to do it either, but that was sweet that Candiace did have faith in her. Y'all, that was the episode. Definitely the best episode so far. And we're approaching the finale because Andy said on Twitter that they're gearing up for the reunion. So when that happens, that means that the finale is close by. I think that they're only giving Potomac a 15 episode season, but y'all, fantastic episode. Thank you all for watching my recap. I hope you all enjoyed. And as always, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all for Salt Lake City. Bye.